we'll have like 10 people in there. It's all good.
You know, these rooms have been pretty packed.
Yeah, we've had a lot of participation. This is awesome. So let me share. Hopefully this won't blast people out. And is that too loud or is that good?
Talk about you.
Do we have a good up? Is it good volume?
Yeah.
Okay, as long as you can hear me. All right. It is 4:30. We're going to go ahead and get started. So, good afternoon. My name is Carl. Um, what can I tell you about myself? Not a whole lot, except I've been doing lights, I guess, now for quite a number of years, and I know probably at least half of y'all. So, with that said, one of my big things that I do is audio. Um, I do voiceovers, I do some jingles and bumpers. And there's a session tomorrow that'll be going more into that and different options for imaging for your display. So, but this one is about using Audacity. So, what I'd like to do, and I'm going to try to see if I can get to, let's see, chat. I'm going to put the chat over here. Let me move it. All right. So, it says you can barely hear me. Is that better? If not, then I'll have to do something else. Um, can you hear me? This is being recorded. I don't know what the problem with the audio is, but we're going to go ahead and muddle through it and see how it goes. So, Audacity. So let's talk about Audacity for a second. I don't know if how many of you actually use Audacity. It's a great tool. It's free. You can download it off the web, and basically it's an easy install. A lot of us use it for editing our audio, specifically when we're setting up sequences. So what I've got here is a screen. This is kind of like what it looks like. So out of the box, this is kind of your workspace here, and we'll walk through some of these, what some of these tabs are, what they mean, how to use them, etc. And then I don't have a lot of slides. Again, mostly it's all hands-on and real time, and we're going to walk through these. And then this is kind of just these are a more in depth of your workspace. So I'm going to try to walk through this, and I don't have my headphones on because I don't like to hear myself. So I'm going to try to do the best that I can with this, and I'm really trying to just make sure that I don't blast your ears out with the volume. So, all right. So we're going to go ahead and get into it with the tool. Um, so I've already got Audacity loaded. I'm going to start with a new workspace. So let me get this out of the way. So here I've got a clean workspace, and I'm going to kind of just walk through what some of these are. Um, so if you go here, this is kind of normally you see this with recording, your pause, your play, your stop, rewind, forward, and this is your record button for when you're doing recording. We're not going to be doing recording in this session per se, but we will be doing some tomorrow. Um, Up here, you've got your standard toolbar where you have a lot of your options. So Audacity gives you a lot of flexibility with being able to use toolbars. It gives you flexibility with using shortcuts. There's a lot of shortcuts involved. It's actually a pretty powerful tool. It's been used for a lot of years. There are some other tools, and again, we'll get more into those maybe in tomorrow's session. Using some Adobe, there's some other audio editing products, but for what most of us need, um, Audacity works quite well, and it's probably the best tool because again, it is free, and you do have a lot of functionality and capability in it. So what I want to do is I want to kind of take some time and walk through some of the tools that you're going to use, and then we'll spend more time going through actually what you're here for is to edit the audio. So over here, you have what's called, let me open up a file. I'm just going to open up this one because we're going to be using that anyway. So over here, this is what your audio file looks like, and you're probably familiar with the waveform. You see this in X-Lights. You've probably seen it in many other tools. And so this is what your audio looks like in waveform. These, don't worry about these red marks for now. Those are not clipping. Those are part of the new spectrograph that they've put into the latest version of Audacity. So over here you have your different tools, the selection tools. So what the selection tool, it is what it is. It gives you an opportunity to go ahead and select a particular part of the audio. So if you're doing cutting, if you're doing splicing, if you're inserting other audio in there, you would go ahead and this is where you select. And we'll walk through that in real time. This is the envelope tool, and this is, a lot of people are scared about this one because they don't know how to use it. And the envelope tool is really a, let me see if I can make this a little bit bigger. So the envelope tool gives you the opportunity to change the volume in your audio while you're working on it. So you can see that as I drag down my mouse, and I'm left clicking on my mouse, so it kind of decreases the audio volume here. And if I can go through and I can click these dots here, I can select different sections. So I can go ahead and make this section quieter, and then I can come back over here. We'll add that, and then should be able to, there we go. And then I can make this section louder. So what we're going to try here is, just to start off with, is this is one way to manage your audio, and we're going to see if we can see how this is going to work if it's not too loud. Hang on, it probably is. So don't let this blast your ears. Let's try to shrink that down a little more so you get the idea. Okay, so it didn't really get the effect that I was trying to do, and I don't know why in using Zoom here. But trust me when I say that it does decrease the volume on it. This is what I was talking about, having the audio issues here. So, but that's what that envelope tool does normally when you're using it. The draw tool gives us the ability to actually drill in to specific parts of the audio. So if you have audio where you have noise, if there's extra sound, static, a cough, something like that, you can actually erase it. So you can actually go in there and find it. That's more of an advanced tool, but you can certainly use it for that. Then we have, obviously, the zoom tool. This is the move tool, so I'm going to go ahead and scroll back in. And the move tool gives you the opportunity to move your audio back and forth here. So actually, we can go ahead when we're splitting it. So I'm going to go ahead, and I'll show you this in a second. So I want to move this section of audio that I just cut, and I'll talk to you about that. So I can go ahead and actually move the audio. So again, if I want to move it out of the way, I want to insert something else, I can certainly do that. All right, the cut tool is basically, yeah, and I have no audio selected. So the cut tool is, if I want to go ahead and I want to cut out some audio, I'd go ahead and select it. I hit cut, and it basically removes the audio. And then we have the multi-tool, which is everything all in one. So that gets to be a little more advanced again, but once you've used Audacity for quite a while, there's a lot of people who like to use that. I just use pretty much the selection tool for everything that I do. All right. There's also the trim tool, and then there's the silence tool, the silence audios, right? So let's say I have a section of audio that I want to go ahead and I want to silence. There's different ways to do that. I can go ahead and hit that, and it'll automatically silence it. So here's an example. And now your audio is quiet. I can also trim sound from both sides of a selection. So here you can see that I basically removed everything before and after the selection that I had. So that's primarily your tool set. There's other options on here, so you can zoom here. You can fit your selection here. You can, go ahead back to your where you were before. This allows you here to play at different speeds. So let's say that I wanted to play and I wanted to slow down the audio. So you can go ahead and change the speed if you do that. Otherwise, if you use display, it'll play at normal speed. So that's kind of your toolbox. So let's get into actually editing audio and what we can do with Audacity. So let me close this. So actually, I'm going to start with a simple, let's see if I copied in Baby Shark. Did I? Of course, everyone loves a Baby Shark, right? So let's, you see all the red again. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the red. So there's different ways, there's different tools within Audacity you use. So what I'm going to do is, for sake of, and we'll get into what some more of these are. You heard Jason talk about normalizing, and I'm going to go ahead and normalize this audio right now to about -3 dB. And we'll get into normalizing, so it kind of brings it down here. You can see where it kind of brought it down. I may let me normalize. Let's go down to -5. Yeah, this is not going to be great. Let's see if I can do it this way. Mommy shark. All right, so we're just going to have to kind of work through this. So here's your audio, Baby Shark. So what you can do is you can't see my keyboard, but if you hold down Control and the scroll wheel, you can go ahead and expand the audio file. Again, if you just click on your left mouse, you can hear, because we have the selection tool, you can go ahead and select specific parts of audio, right? So here I want to, let's go back to the beginning. So for the beginning, you have some keys that are kind of cool. J, the J keyboard key will take you back to the beginning of an audio piece, and the K will take you to the end. So if you want to go back to the beginning and end, J and K, that kind of helps you. So let's say in this particular audio, we want to go ahead and we want to remove the first part of it. We want to remove that. So we're going to go ahead and play it here. Okay, for whatever reason, we want to remove this. So what we can do, first of all, we go ahead and we select it. So we go ahead and left click and drag, and then we're right up to here. And then I just go ahead and I can either use my scissors, I can hit the delete key. So now I just removed that. If I realize that I screwed up, oops, I didn't want to take that out, I can do Control Z, or I can go up here and do edit and undo. It'll undo, obviously, like every other tool, it'll undo the last command that you did. Let's see. There's a couple questions. Can you use Audacity to do a mashup? Absolutely. And I'll walk through that time permitting. Can you load multiple sound streams and crossfade? Absolutely. You can do that as well. So there's a lot of things you can do with Audacity. So let's say that now I want to only have a part of the song playing. It's an intro. I've done a short intro sequence where I have a voiceover, and maybe I want to use that. So we're going to start here. And now, so right about here, I want to go ahead and I want to start fading down. So what I can do is I can select, right? This is real simple. I can go ahead and select there, and you have a lot of opportunities here, a lot of options, and again, there's a lot of shortcuts. But I'm walking through for folks who maybe haven't used Audacity and they want to be able to edit their own audio. So you go through here, you have a lot of what they call effects, and there's effects that you can add into. So they're always coming out with new effects. There's a lot of plugins that you can add to Audacity, but really this is more of the high level. How do I get my audio to fit the sequence that I want, to get the effect that I want? So in this particular case, I'm going to fade out, because this is where I want to fade out this part here, right up to here. So what I can do is, if this is all I'm going to use, now remember what I said with the cut, you can select it, you can cut it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do a Control I, right? So for Control key, and again, this is on a PC, I, and you notice it made the line bigger, right? So what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to go ahead and move this over. I can just delete it if I want to, but maybe I want to use this part of the audio for the end of my song. So I'll do the move tool and just move it out of the way. So now what I want to do is I want to go ahead and fade this part of it. So I'll go back to my select tool, right? I'll go right about here, because once you've done this quite a bit, you kind of know where everything is, and you can kind of figure out right where you are, and that's why you listen and you figure out what the wave looks like.
Mommy shark do 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 do.
So what I can do here now is I can do an effect called a fade out. There's different types of fades, so I can basically just do a fade out.
Mommy shark do 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 do. Mommy shark do 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 do. Mommy shark do 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 do. Mommy shark.
And it's not giving me the audio that I want, and it's a little bit disconcerting. But it would decrease the volume there. So, and if you want to repeat it, if you want to make it quieter, you can actually go in here and you can do a redo. If you look over here under tools, or actually I can do I can go back into effect and do it again, or I can just go ahead and redo what I did. But here, again, I can go to effect and I can do a fade out, and it'll fade out again. So now I can go ahead and add whatever I want, or I can use this particular section for my song. If I want to save it, there's two different ways to save it. I can save the project, right? Because maybe I want to save this and go back to it later. So it doesn't save necessarily the audio, but it'll save the audio extract. But let's say I want to save this now as a file. And as Jason said, in the prior session, you can save it as an MP3. I can export it. I'm saving it 192K. There's the name of it. And I want it as a constant bit rate. You want to save everything as a constant bit rate. And it'll go ahead and save it as an MP3 file. And that's it. So let's say now that we want to crossfade another track, right? So we want to bring in another song. And again, I apologize for the sound not cooperating here. But let's say that we want to bring in another piece of audio, and we'll just go ahead and we'll bring in Baby Shark again, right? You notice it'll bring it in down here. I'm going to go ahead and normalize this again. Okay. Oops. I had everything selected, so it normalized the whole thing, which is okay. So now I want to go ahead and crossfade. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my move tool. I'm going to move this over, bring it in over here, right? And so what we're going to do is, hopefully,
Mommy shark do 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 do.
okay, so that time it worked. You could hear it fade down, right?
Do do. Mommy shark do 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 do.
Notice we didn't do really a fade on it. We didn't really do a fade. All we did was bring in the song. So what we can do here is we can select it where we want to do what we call the crossfade, and you would go in both tracks. And you notice when I did the import, it automatically added a track here. So there's a lot of things Audacity does for you that you don't have to do manually. So now that we've done ahead and done the crossfade, or got the tracks lined up where we want it, we can go back into our effect, and we can do crossfade clips or crossfade tracks. Crossfade clips would crossfade clips on the same track, because everything is managed into tracks. And then crossfade tracks is if you have multiple tracks. And so you'd probably use crossfade tracks if you're doing voiceovers, jingles, things like that. Whereas if you just want to load all your audio on one line, you can do that too. So what we're going to do is we're going to crossfade one. I usually go ahead and leave these by default. And what you'll notice is that now
Do
when
do do,
I
mommy shark. Do
crossfade
do
down,
do 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 do, mommy shark. Do 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 do, mommy shark.
they're going to go ahead and do that automatically. And that's it. If you realize that's not what you wanted to do, you can do Control Z, edit, undo, and you're back to where you were before. So these are kind of like things you're going to do all the time, right? And we're going to have an example of a crossfade or a creating a new track from two different tracks. What I've done in one of my sequences, and I've used it for a number of years. Okay, so again, you have a lot of options. This is pretty much it. If you master this part of it, the rest of it is just a matter of playing with the tool. So again, let's say that I wanted to, I can do a couple things here. I can delete this, I can remove it. Again, it's the same tools. I select, delete, I just hit the delete key on that. If I realize that's not what I wanted to do, I can do an undo. I can remove, I can do all kinds of things, right, to a song. So normally what happens is when you get audio, and not that we promote audio that you haven't purchased, so we would never do that, but some people do use audio from other sources, and a lot of times that audio is not really that great. Or audio that you have. Now, some of this audio has already been post-processed, so that's why it looks the way it does. It looks okay. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to bring in another track. Let's see. Let's go to, I didn't like that. Okay. Okay. So this is another common one that folks use in their displays, and I'll kind of show you. You've probably seen where this was a munge track or a merge track. So this is going to be an example of how I would go ahead and put an audio track with a vocal track to get a very unique track. So this is from So this first part here is all of, there's no lyrics, and then this is the part where they start singing the lyrics. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and import, I could have done this the other way. I'm going to import the actual Linus, actually I think this is the one that I did. Let me see if I have it here. There it is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this on solo. So if I have multiple tracks, and I want you to look here for a second and see that you notice that the volume level on these is going to be completely different for both of them. So I'm going to put this on solo for a second here.
Is there anyone who knows what Christmas is all about?
Okay.
And there were in the same country shepherds, abiding in the field.
So you notice that that's just the lyrics. There's no music in the background, as you've probably heard in
In
some
the
others.
manger.
Okay, so we're going to walk through taking this and editing it and creating a, I guess you wouldn't call it a mashup, but yeah, you'd call it this is a custom audio file for your display. So first thing that I want to do is I want to go ahead and swap them because I want to have my lyrics up here. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and edit this out. So what you can see here is there's a lot of dead space. So we're going to go from here.
I can tell you what Christmas is all about.
So you got several seconds of white noise, right? Well, I don't want that just to sit unless maybe I do want that. I want lights just to kind of dim or, change colors or something, but I don't want to do that. So what I can do is take out this because I don't like the space in here. So I can take this whole area here and I can just cut it out. So again, I've highlighted it. I'm going to hit delete. Now when I play it back.
This is all about. Lights, please.
And again, we have another set of area here for dramatic effect. If you want to keep it in there, you can. I'm going to go ahead and delete it. That's good.
Please. And there were in the same country shepherds.
All right. So now the next thing I want to do, though, there's a lot of background noise in that. And you can hear the hiss, right? So this was actually from the original recording. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm going to try to get rid of some of that noise because that noise is going to be amplified as you play your audio. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into effect and I'm going to go into noise reduction. Okay. And so what noise reduction does is I've already selected that section and I'm going to get the noise profile. You can leave everything in there by default. Audacity is smart enough to know what it needs to do. So now I've gotten that noise profile. Now what I want to do is I want to select the entire track, and I just double clicked and it selected the whole track. I'm going to go back into my effect and I'm going to go back to my noise reduction, and it's going to remove that noise from.
And there were in
I
the
may have to
same
do it again,
country.
right? Because sometimes it doesn't remove all of it because of the way that you get that hiss, but it's quieter. So we can go ahead and we could do that. We're going to go ahead and do that again. Go effect. Oops. It's not giving me redo. There it is. Repeat noise reduction.
Out. Lights, please.
You notice
And
how
there
now it
were
got
in
it
the same
quieter.
country shepherds.
So I've removed it. I've removed it from that part of the audio. So now what I want to do is I want to go ahead and I want to keep this whole part of it because this is really going to be the key to it. So we're going to come down here.
To God in the highest, and on earth peace, goodwill toward men.
So now we've got all this end here, right? And then he does the.
That's what Christmas is all about, Charlie Brown.
So what I want to do is I want to go ahead and I want to cut this out again because I don't really want to have all that dead space. So I'll delete that again.
Goodwill toward men. That's what Christmas is all about, Charlie Brown.
And I don't really want this part here. So I'm going to delete that. Right? So that's what I end up with.
This is all about Charlie Brown.
Delete that. All right. So now I've gone ahead and I've got my lyric track or my lyric part of it that I want to keep. So now what I want to do is I want to try to get the, I'm going to solo this. What I want to do is I want to have that right behind the lyric. So what I can do is now I can go ahead and take this and I can listen to both tracks.
Isn't there anyone?
So I don't want to start it though until after Linus starts his speech. So what we're going to do is go back here.
The glory of the Lord.
I think it's right here.
And there were.
And what I want to do is I want to go ahead and use my move tool. We're going to go here.
And there were in the same country shepherds, abiding in the field, keeping watch over their flock by night.
Now again, you can't really hear the audio here. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to, again, I'm not going to use EQ here because this is just an example, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to normalize this, and I'm going to normalize this to say I'm going to do this to minus 3 dB. Okay. Again, if this was over 0, everything does under 0. Anything over 0 when you're talking in audio, you get what Jason was talking about is clipping, you get static, and you can't really do anything about that. You can't fix that.
Lights, please. This is all about.
Here.
Lights, please. And there were in the same country shepherds, abiding in the field, keeping watch over their flock by night.
And so if you don't want the music as loud in the background, again, what we can do is we can use another tool that's similar. It's called Amplify. But what we're going to do is we're going to bring down the loudness or the effective loudness of that audio.
And there were in the same country shepherds.
And I want to move this because I want it to be lined up a little better. So I'm going to use my move tool. I'm going to move it over a little more to the left.
Please. And there were in the same country shepherds, abiding in the field, keeping watch over their flock by night.
And so now we get to the part of
Will toward men. That's what Christmas is all about, Charlie Brown.
And you'll notice, just because of the way the audio is, it lines up pretty perfectly in the next
Christmas
phrase.
is all about, Charlie Brown.
And what you can do is you can do a couple things. If you just want to stop that and you don't want to do anymore, you can do a fade out. Repeat fade out, or Control R. So this is where you can do your Control R to repeat it out, to fade it out, or repeat it. And you notice that just did a nice quiet fade. Let's say you didn't want to do that though. Let's say you wanted to use the whole rest of the sequence. You could just leave it alone. Oops. Again, I can undo what I did. Right? And now, so what you now have is you have a sequence, which I'm going to go ahead and look at it. It's a little over 2 minutes, right? I now have a custom sequence that I can use in my display, and I can actually create the lights to it. And that's pretty much it. Now, what I can do here is there's other options you can do for audio. So there's an option here. There's I thought you heard about compression, which is more on your vocals. Your EQ, which you can kind of change your lows and your highs and make it sound a little more prominent. We'll do that more again in the session tomorrow. Loudness normalization is something I wanted to talk about a little bit. There's a couple things I wanted to talk about. But loudness normalization is a new concept within Audacity, and really what it does is there's a perceived sound. So when we work in audio, we normally work in what you hear decibels, RMS. We're looking at the chart, right? So we're looking at the numbers and we're saying, okay, we don't want to go too high, right? We want to keep everything within the right range. We don't want to hit the yellows and reds. But what perceived loudness is these are what they call LUFs. And so you'll hear about LUFs more in podcasts. So people who are doing podcasting, most of the podcast providers. So when we have the professional triers, which most of you are probably aware of, they do their podcast. And so most of those Apple, iTunes, some of the other where you post your podcasts, -16 LUFs or relative loudness is what they recommend or what they require for your podcast. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take both of these and I'm going to make them 16 LUFs. You notice it kind of changed the wave, right? And I'll show you what that
Charlie
does.
Brown, I can tell you what Christmas is all about. Lights, please. And there were in the same country shepherds.
So it didn't necessarily change the audio curve. It just kind of changed the loudness and made it more level, if that makes any sense, right? And there's other tools we do to normalize, or again, sometimes you don't want to. You want to have the quiet. You want to have the peaks and valleys, but if you're doing a lot of, again, podcasting or live streaming, you really want to have some of that constant audio in the background. So now what we can do is, now that we've done that, again, we can go ahead and save this. And the way we would do it is we would do an export. And again, you have multiple options. Again, the relative difference between an MP3 and a WAV, for most of what we are doing, especially in our hobby, MP3s are fine. If you're doing more formal audio work, voiceovers, or just anything else that you're recording, you may want to do a WAV. Some people say MP3 is a loss, or you lose some of the audio quality. Again, most people can't hear that. So I'm going to save it as an MP3. Again, constant bit rate, 192 kilobits per second. and I'm just going to go ahead and save it in this file here. I can go ahead and I can add my own information here. Again, keep in mind that you're doing this for your own use. You're not going to be able to turn around and resell this because most of this audio is copyrighted. If I go to here, I think it's going to be right here. So this is the file we just created. Let's see if this will play. All right.
They were so afraid, and the angel said unto them, Fear not.
It's a delay, so let's go back.
Christmas is all about? Sure, Charlie Brown. I can tell you what Christmas is all about. Lights, please. And there were in the same country shepherds.
And there's your audio file. So you've just created a new file. And those are pretty much the key things you're going to do. You can change the length of files. Most sequences, people get bored after 2.5, 3 minutes, 3.5 minutes. So if you've got a really long song and you want to cut it down, that's another way to use Audacity. So I'm going to show you another example on how we can use Audacity to create a mashup or a merged file for doing something unique. So I'm going to create a new session here. I'm going to bring in, let's see, so Nutrocker, and everybody knows Nutrocker. Again, it was very popular back a number of years ago. I'm thinking about bringing it back in my display. So again, this is actually fairies, and so this isn't actually Nutrocker, it's Nutcracker. Sorry, I was working on something else. So I'm going to import another file. I'm going to bring in the Nutcracker suite. Now, this is the whole Nutcracker suite. So if you choose to do a sequence to this, more power to you. Good luck with that. So what I wanted to do when I created this is I wanted to create a old to new mashup. So this is one audio file, right? And so it's got all of the Nutcracker suite. Well, I don't want the whole thing. I just want to have Dance of the Sugar Plum Fairies. So what I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to leave this where it is. And I'm going to go into here where the fairies part starts. So, and I've already timed it. And so that's going to be at right around 4 minutes and 30 seconds. So we're going to go ahead and pull that here. Wait. We'll go back over here. Oops. Hang on. Get this lined up. That's one of the disadvantages of the move tool is you tend to move stuff and you have to. All right. So now we're back where we were. I'm going to go back to the select tool. We'll go to our 4 minutes and 30s. You can also mark items too, right? So here you can see where the prior audio stops and fairies starts. Okay. So now what I want to do is I don't want any of this. But I do want to have a little bit of silence. So I'm going to do something here. I'm going to leave a little bit of this here, but I'm going to delete. Remember before I said I could use this tool to delete everything outside of my selection. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and make it easy. I'm going to left click, drag, select, delete. Okay, so now what I have is I left a little space here. But what I'm going to do with that, I'm going to go ahead and zoom in. And the way you zoom is you hit Control and you use your mouse wheel up. I want to make this silent so I have enough room to play with. Let me make that solo for a second. So I'm going to make this silent. Okay, and I'm just going to go ahead and use my silence button here. Or I could delete it, but I want the space. Whoops. Sorry about that. Hit the wrong one. That's your silence. Boom. All right. So now I have silence over here. Oh, I got a little more. I don't want to lose that. So sometimes it is a little bit of an art. Okay. And we're going to silence. Now what we should have is a clean transition. You notice how quiet it is. So I'm going to, and I want to find the end of this too. So I can probably just look at it. Let's go ahead and make it shorter. Okay, so that's it. Now I don't want anything beyond that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the trim tool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this all the way over here. I'm going to take my trim tool, and it's effectively going to remove everything else, so I don't have to go ahead and drag and scroll and select and everything else. So now what I have is I have the selection that I want, right, with the silence. And I can clean that up. So what I'm going to do is that's going to be the beginning of it. So I'm going to go back over here, take off solo. I'm going to move this out of the way for now because I'm going to be using this. Because there's going to be a part of this I want too. And the part that I want of this is there's going to be a transition part. So when I come in here, I want to be able to kind of merge the two. This is part of this is pretty much where I want to be. This is what I'm going to use as my transition area. So what I can do here is I'm going to cut. So I'm going to select. I'm going to do a Control I. And I'm not really going to use this anymore. I can move it out of the way. And I can also go ahead and delete it. So again, now what I have is, oops. I think that's what I wanted. Okay, I'm going to delete. It doesn't like that. Hang on. Because I didn't. Okay, we're going to select this, delete. All right. And now what I'm going to do is go back to my Mannheim Steamroller part of it. And I'm going to find the section in here that I want to merge it with, right? So if I don't know where that is, I can go back here because if I have it marked, again, I want to go back to 0. Okay, I'm going to solo this. Back to my select. Okay, that's the section that I want. So what I'm going to do is here, for now, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to delete it for sake of timing. So now what I have is I have 2 sections of music from 2 different songs that I'm going to merge together. So we talked about the cross trade, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this up because this is what I'm going to start with. Again, I'm going to take this off solo. So select, and this is where I know I'm going to be. So this is kind of where I want to start and have it merged, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this kind of, let's see if we could do this as a, let's see what happens if we do a fade in. Okay, do a Control R to repeat. Okay, and I'm going to try that as a fade in. Okay, so I want to move that over, right, because it started too early, and that's okay. Let's see what it sounds like now. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to maybe do a fade out again, or I can do a crossfade. So here, and I want them lined up, so I want to be able to know exactly where they hit. Okay, so what I got to do is I got to do this, move this over a little more. Okay, what I'm going to do for now is I'm going to silence this, just so that, okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually crossfade it right here. And I may actually increase the volume on this. So again, I'm going to, I may want to amplify this just a bit, but I'm going to use the normalize. Okay. Okay, I want to bring this in a little more because I want it to start sooner. See what it sounds like. Okay, so what I did was I actually cut off more than I really wanted to here, but I can still make it work because it would have been a more smoother transition. So I'm going to move this over here. I'm going to listen to it again. So here I can do a crossfade here. Okay, and we'll do a couple of repeats. So Control R to repeat so we can bring it in. So what you can do is you can kind of play with different parts of music. You can bring in different, all kinds of different audio, and you can really make it your own. You can really customize it. The beauty of Audacity is if I want to save this now, let's say I'm not done with it or I want to do something else, I can go ahead and save it as a project file. So it's going to save the project. It's going to say, it doesn't actually save an audio file, but it's going to save it as a project. So I'm going to call this Summit Project. So now what I've done is I've actually saved what I worked on. And what it does is, let's see, not really sure where it saved it right now. Oh, actually I do. Okay. I probably saved it in here. There it is. So what it actually did was it saved where I made all my cuts and transitions, right? So really, these are all from the audio. This is all of the areas from the audio that it knows where it saved it. So when I open this back up again, it's going to know exactly what I was working on. So if I go back into Audacity and I reopen it, I'm going to get back to here. Now, let's say again, this is my finished project. I'm going to go ahead and export this. I'll just leave it that way. Save. It's going to mix down as one file. I can go ahead and change the metadata. And now I've effectively created a new MP3 file. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open the actual file. What did I call it? There it is. Well, this is what the end result would sound like. So it's one file. This is what it would look like. It would look like one continuous file. So this is what I did. This was the final result. So what I did was I just merged the two and ended up, it does take a while to go ahead and listen to it and try to get to where you have everything synced in. But the results, it's just like sequencing. Once you get it, the results can be amazing. And then you have a creation that's yours. Pardon the dog barking in the background. That's yours and you can use it for your display. So there's a lot of other things you can do with music. These are just kind of, again, these are things you can start doing today. It's once you start getting into Audacity, it's very easy to use. It's very easy to work around. There's a lot of help out there. So somebody said I missed where you merged them. So let me open up the project. Okay, it's already opened another window. So let me go into here. So here's where it is, right? So what I did was, these are actually the raw files. This is the raw data. So everything in Audacity, it basically saves the metadata. And it knows exactly where you made all the transitions, the cuts, what you did, and it's a temporary working file. So all I did to save it, make it into an actual file was I did an export. And so the export actually renders it down and creates it into a file like an MP3 or a WAV file. And it's really good. So I'll give you a quick example on something like this. And it's, we're kind of at time. But let's say I'm going to delete this, right? And let's say here's where our, oops. So here's where this is all I wanted, but I want to make this exactly a minute, right? So let's say I just want to save this and I want it to be a minute. So what I can do is I can actually delete this out, cut that, right? And here again, I can just fade it out. And since if I look up here in effect, again, all I need to do is go to my, go to my fade out and just continue to Control R. And you notice now I have a fade out and I basically have a minute sequence. I can, clean it up and make it exact. So that's pretty much how you do it. There's a lot of ways to do that. Okay, so what if you have several songs at different sound levels in your show? How do you make them all the same level? Again, good question. So let's open up, and Audacity is again one way to do that. So I'm going to open up both of these.
Hey, Carl,
and
we're
I'll
at 10 minutes right
import-
now.
Sorry?
You got 10-minute warning.
Great, thanks. So I'm going to import both of these. And again, there's a couple of ways you can do this. And there's a lot of other work you need to do to get audio to kind of play well, to play nice, right? But what we're going to do here is, for the sake of this exercise, is I'm just going to cut off. I'm going to do this. Go over here, trim it, right? So now I've trimmed it and made them both the same. And I want both of these to be the same volume. So what I can do is select them both. Oops. Right, I selected them both. And again, this is where we have normalize, loudness normalization. So the loudness normalization is one way to do it. So effectively, it'll make them sound the same. But let's do the normalize. And again, a lot of people will say, well, normalize, you always want to do it for everything. Yes and no, not necessarily, because you're going to have peaks and valleys. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select this. And what it's going to do is it's going to normalize both based on the lowest common denominator or the highest watermark. So now what it's done is it's normalized both. You still have these peaks and valleys that you have to deal with, but again, you may want those, right? Because you don't want all your audio to be at the same level. You want to have those ebbs and flows with different volume levels. But now what we've done is we've pretty much effectively made the volumes closer to where they are. The other way to do it, of course, is you take each track individually, and then you would go through a step of normalizing, equalizing, compressing. So compressing is a way to, if I want to compress this audio, there's a way to make the ebbs and valleys in that audio effectively more level, right? So there is a whole process in that. I'll talk more about that tomorrow in the session on voiceovers and imaging your display. So that's pretty much it. I'm always available for questions if you want to IM me. Now that you have, let's see, now that you have both loaded, how do you save each? You can save each. What I can do is I can actually go in here and I can save this individually if I wanted to. What I can do is I can delete this and save it and then undo it. I can export selected audio, right? So if I don't want to save the other one, if I just want one of them, I can go ahead and just delete it and save it. Or I can just select what I want. This will only save, the track that I have. Track 1. And it's pretty fast. And then here, same thing, I can export it as track 2. So there's different ways to do it. There's a lot of good documentation on the web about Audacity, but again, if you ever have any specific questions, ping me, IM me. That's it. Thank you. Any other questions while we're here? All right. So what we're going to do then is go back into our screen of,
Got on share.
hang on. Oh yeah, I want to stop sharing. Okay, great.
Okay. Oh,
Do you have the,
you disable participant screen sharing.
oh, did I? No.
Yeah. Make me host.
Yes, let me, hang on. There you go.
Thank you very much. And I'll make sure not to hit end when I leave.
Yeah, don't hang on. Let's go ahead and hit the, can you turn off the live streaming from where you are?
Oh, yeah, let me.
If not, I can take back hosting.